Welcome to another episode of Just More Fix. This is James. With me in this episode is Lacey.
Hey.
You can find us online at justmorefix.com or on Twitter at justmorefix. If you like us, you can support us at Patreon, and you can give us a rating and review at iTunes wherever you find us at. In this episode, we're going to sit down at Gen Con with Jacob Hurst, Donnie Garcia, and Dirk Leichty. And now, it's time to get our gaming fix.
You're about to listen to our interview with Jacob Hurst, Dirk Leichty, and Donnie Garcia that we recorded at Gen Con 52. You may notice the audio quality is a bit off from what we normally do, but that's because we recorded it in a hotel room at Gen Con 52. We had a great time sitting down with them and geeking out about games and Google Plus and all kinds of stuff, you know, book production and whatnot. So big thank you to them for taking the time to sit down with us. And without any further ado, here is Jacob Hurst, Donnie Garcia, and Dirk Leichty.
All right, so we are here at Gen Con 52.
That sounds
Is that right? Mm-hmm. With Jacob Hurst, Dirk Leichty, and Donnie Garcia, designers all involved with Swordfish Islands project. So for those out there that don't know who you guys are or you're familiar with your stuff, just a quick background, a quick who you are and what you guys have produced.
Okay, so I'm Jacob Hurst, and I headed up doing Hot Springs Island, and then published Silent Titans with Patrick Stewart and Dirk Leichty. And then I'm currently working on a new project called Tomb of Black Sand. Ran a Kickstarter for that earlier this year, and so we are almost finished, like for real.
I'm excited for it.
I am Donnie Garcia. I am one of the co-creators of Hot Springs Island, and also working with Jacob on Tomb of the Black Sand, which, again, yes, play test mode. We had a play test this weekend. It was great. So we're working on that right now. We're really excited. We want to get it out as soon as possible, so that way people can enjoy it as much as we are right now.
And I'm Dirk. I did the art in Silent Titans, and I have art in Troika and other smaller things. I have a project I'm working on now called Super Blood Harvest. It's about space vampires. That will be out sometime.
Who's that through?
Me.
Oh, through right on. So it's like an OSR thing, or is it like in the same vein as like the Price Stat and all that, or?
Yeah, I kind of have my own sort of into the odd hacked system.
Yeah. Okay. Right on. Very cool. Hot Springs did really, really well, and Cleanup and has had a ton of huge reception. We love it. We have a Hot Springs game at our house that we've been super, super happy with. Awesome. So where did that all? Was that start off as like a home game, or where did it all start from and kind of get off the ground from?
Oh, you have a smile over there.
Well, so I was working at Blizzard Entertainment with Evan and Donnie. So Evan Peterson is one of our other co-creators. And so I worked directly with Evan, and then Evan has been friends with Donnie for like forever. Like they went to high school together and stuff. And so Evan and Donnie played games all the time. And so in 2011, I saw all of the Kickstarters really taking off. And I looked at that stuff, and I saw, you know, these projects launching and raising tens of thousands of dollars on like a wish and a prayer. And so I went to Donnie and Evan, and I was like, guys, like we play D&D together. Like our games are awesome. Like we can do this. Let's just try and do this. I think like we should just talk about this. I have this buddy Gabriel that like makes awesome art, and like he draws the best monsters I've ever seen. So let me see if maybe I can get him to work with us and stuff. So let's just try and do this. And so Evan and Donnie were like, that sounds okay. And we met at this pizza place to talk about it. And Donnie brought a map with him that was from like a campaign that he'd been doing with Evan, you know, and their group for a long time. And on this map, there was this little spot that said the Swordfish Islands, and I was like, that's the coolest name I've ever read. What is the Swordfish Islands? And then Donnie basically said, well, I mean, you could say what you...
It wasn't really anything that was developed. It was just it was a place that in one of the games that I wasn't even a part of, a friend of mine, Evan Peterson, another friend of ours, we all kind of just took turns running games on this just homebrew world that we'd created. And one of the games that Evan was running had one of our friends go to the Swordfish Islands and find a group of elves to help repopulate this certain territory that had been the elves had been decimated. And so through that, just kind of helping them build and rebuild and all that stuff. It was just a place that was, the elves used to be there, and then they were gone.
Right.
And Jacob was like, well, we could totally do something with that.
And so that's what we did. Like, that was kind of the thing. I wanted to make awful, horrible, terrible elves for whatever reason, because I'm an edgelord, I guess. I don't know. So then we made awful, horrible, terrible elves, and they were gone. And so it just kind of fit with that. And so the idea is that we were supposed to... I really liked Planescape, like, a lot.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do that same sort of thing where you get a box, and in the box you have a few books. And the idea was there was supposed to be one little booklet for each of the islands, because there's nine islands?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a couple things that are underwater. So there's like 11 things total. But yeah, there's 9 islands officially. And so I was like, well, we'll just do that. Everything will have its own little booklet. This will be really fast. We'll just knock this out. And
grown, right?
Yeah. Well, because that was the thing that I said. I was like, so nobody knows who we are. We're completely unknowns. We can't just go do a Kickstarter like these other people. Like, we need to get it finished first. And so then we got together every week, once a week, and it was, I mean, looking back on it now, it was like a completely magical time, because it was me and Donnie and Evan and Gabriel, and we were sitting in a room, and instead of playing Dungeons and Dragons or another tabletop game, we were world building Swordfish Islands. So we have rough draft notes for everything, but none of it's polished. And then after we had done that for, I don't know, 6 months, 8 months, like, it was quite a while, I finally said, okay, no. We need to just finish one island. What is the most complete island?
Right.
Like, which one should we pick? And we decided on Hot Springs Island, and that's what we did.
Right on. So, who came up with the idea that of the Nereids getting put in the statues and the paintings? Because that is like an amazingly terrible idea. You know, I was like, you're talking about awful elves and whatnot, and I was like, this is so good and so terrible. Like, in an awesome way. You know what I mean? You know? Yeah.
Man, who did I?
There was so much that, like, came out of that. And, I'm trying to think.
Well, I mean, so much of it, too. We were constantly pushing each other.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, like, it was very collaborative. I mean, because somebody would throw something out, and then it would be like, oh, well, no, but what about this? And, like, let's push it over here, and let's make it, how can we make it even more terrible? Oh, well, what if this happened?
Right.
And so, I mean, I remember us definitely agreeing on, like, how horrible, like, that entire situation with Meltalia and the Nereids is awful. And there was a lady that had helped me out, like, do a little editing, because I wasn't happy with how the Meltalia story was written, and so I just, had somebody do like an editing pass on it or whatever, and she read it and got to the end of it and was like, I was so angry when I got to the end of it, because, like, they just used her to set the temperature of the water, and here she is, this, like, water goddess. This is awful. I, like, threw the manuscript, and I'm all, well, that's perfect. I think we nailed it, guys.
Well, it's one of the first things, like, when I was just sort of flipping through and I stumbled into it, and I read it, and I was like, oh, this is something else. Do you know what I mean? Like, but in a good way, because, like, there's a lot of, not to put shots anywhere, there's a lot of kind of generic fantasy that has the same similar tropes along, and with their own little twists on them, but there's not a lot of, like, real solid, this is a way different thing that's clearly its own, like, in a vein of its own. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And that was the first one that popped out for me, where I realized this is something else, and I really, really, because a lot of products, it seems like I get them and I mine them for ideas, as opposed to taking it and saying, I want to do this. This is exactly what I want to do. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And one of the things that we haven't done is we have probably 20, 30, 40 pages of lore that was just written just to kind of give us an idea, because we're trying to come at this, everyone knows traditional elves, but we're doing something completely different. So we had to really figure out, like, how do they get to this point where they're capturing some water goddess just so they can, adjust the temperature of their bathhouse, know? And that was really one of the things that it was like, so where does it start? And then we just wrote and wrote and wrote. Evan would look at it, Jacob would look at it, come back to me, and we would just pass it around. That was what we were doing. And with that, it was just like, when we got to that point of that whole event, it was like, what about this? What about this? And all of a sudden it was like, we all just kind of looked at each other and were like, that's it.
That's it, yeah.
That's it.
Well, I couldn't think of anything that was more decadent than taking something that powerful and using it in this just totally inglorious way.
Right.
Like, I mean, that I don't know, that spoke to me. I'm like, that is awful. I hate that. So that's what it's got to be. I don't know. So, yeah.
I don't know. Well, it's just neat because there's a lot of setting books out there that are sort of they touch on a few things about culture and kind of give you just a brief glimpse. But there's what with the elves and the lizard guys. I can't think of their name.
The ancients.
Yeah. And no. The not the ancient ones. The ones that swim in.
The green ones or the blue ones?
We have.
Yeah.
There's green lizards and blue lizards, and there's the Goas are the green ones,
right.
And then the Kiru are the blue ones.
And but so there's so many different factions, and then with like the Fuegonauts and everything, like. Each of them has enough of this piece of their own kind of like culture and like the way the lens they see the world through. And then on top of that, I feel like the way the world is presented with the elves, like the decadence and then like the Cypopa and, all like it really gives it a much more tangible feel. And then on top of that, you put the plants and the animals and the poisons that are in all the different, like, it's like a travel book.
Yeah.
Like I read it, but the field guide is one of the coolest things. But it's like a travel guide of like, hey, if you were going to go to Brazil in the Amazon, these are the peppers you don't eat or whatever.
Right,
Do you know
right.
what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's, that was one of the inspirations. Is just like travel guides, and also I had an old copy of the U.S. Army Survival Manual.
Oh, right on.
And so it talks about like this is all the stuff you do. If you get into this weather, you want to make this type of this type of shelter. Don't eat this. This is what plants are, and it has pictures of all this stuff, and it has a short description of everything that you have, and that was like, I mean, one of the guys, Evan Peterson, he bought a bunch of books on like plants and stuff and was writing stuff and everything like that. But that was Jacob's thing is that he wanted something to give to the players so you can sit there at the table and have something, so that way. For me as a DM,
right,
trying to have to like explain everything.
So where did that idea come from?
Yeah, so there are two things that led to that, and one of them is when I was in middle school, high school, and playing Dungeons and Dragons all the time, I had gotten an adventure, and I don't even remember what it is at this point, but I read it, and so I knew everything. I had all the spoilers. I knew where the secret doors were. I knew what the monsters' weaknesses were, and so then I had to run the game, which I didn't really want to do, but I did, and so I sort of like trapped myself because I bought the product and read it, and then as like I'm reading the OSR blogs because I'm not happy with 4th edition, and I'm going through stuff, and I get on this forum, and people are talking about how the big magnificent box sets like Planescape and Dark Sun and Ravenloft, that those basically killed TSR. And so I'm thinking about that, saying, but those were so wonderful and I loved them. And so my thought was that what happens, so we're working at Blizzard Entertainment, World of Warcraft, which, when somebody plays World of Warcraft or a video game, everybody that plays basically buys a copy, right? When you look at Dungeons and Dragons or a tabletop role-playing game, the only person that's allowed to buy a copy is the Dungeon Master. Because if any of the players buy, and they read it and consume it, then they ruin their experience.
Right.
And so I was like, well, what can we do that basically makes something that players can buy that's going to be an asset and like as a player, and so Hot Springs Island is a sandbox. Sandboxes are hard because if people don't buy into the whole idea of a sandbox, then like nothing happens. Like it's analysis paralysis. Like I can do anything, or choice paralysis, I guess. Yeah. So then that's kind of the field guide tries to solve that, and also from like a greedy capitalist evil perspective, right? Theoretically, if there's a table of guys, like the Dungeon Master can buy the dark, and then a couple of the players can buy field guides, and like we make a little bit more money, but everybody's happy and everybody's using it, and they can, it's functional, and so that was a lot of the goal with that.
My favorite thing about it is at our table. In our world, there will ever only be one field guide. Okay. So we pass it around, and I tell like our players, I'm like, I want you to write in this book, like please make notes, throw away whatever sacred things you have about books, but this one it's okay. Write in it, jot things down.
I was going to say that to kind of in that vein, there was somebody that was on like a message board, maybe on Reddit or something like that, who had actually taken a copy of the field guide and like I don't know if he scanned it or even if he cut it up, but he gave pages.
Of
the players' field guide as
he tea-dyed them and baked them in the oven so that they looked like these wrinkled, ratted pages. And so he's like, "Oh, so you all are playing and you find this like paper like wrapped on a tree. What is it?" And would give it to them at like random intervals. Right. And so I mean the fan response has been just freaking amazing.
It's really cool because like I like the idea of that we play this game and there's so much to do on the island itself. You could spend several games or campaigns there and never see everything. But what I like about with the way we're approach to it is that if that game ends and we run another game there, here's the field guide. Now you get to look through what they found.
They've added new knowledge.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's
Is
awesome.
that legit? Is it not? And I thought it was like a fun way to sort of customize it to our table and make it, sort of like put our own thing into it. And it was just sort of like a happy accident that happened. Mm-hmm. But the other thing I found with it I really liked is there is so much on the island. And like you said, the choice paralysis can be kind of hard. But when the players flip through the books, maybe they're not involved with what's happening. It gives them something to look like, oh, well, I didn't hear about this creature or whatever it is, but I really want to find, this is interesting to me. So it kind of like is a way for them to find their way through the world. Does that make sense?
And for people that are really into backstories and stuff, they can tie their backstory into the island and say, oh, there's this magical healing crystal frog and my dying grandmother, I need to find one. Right. And then that person, because they want that and that's their quest, like that's all you need, because then they have a reason to explore, and as they explore they run into the factions, they run into the monsters, and they start causing chain reactions of consequences, and then you've got your game. And speaking of like replayability, like or not replayability, but like the number of campaigns and stuff, there's this group of guys in Brooklyn that they have been playing 56 campaigants or 56 sessions on Hot Springs Island.
Oh, wow.
They haven't left. They moved into the Temple of Tranquility. They're working for the Steam Imps, and they just hang out there, and it's amazing. It's amazing.
I don't know. There's a lot. The field guide is my favorite. I don't actually get to see the black book,
okay.
So I don't know a lot about what's in there. But I get the field guide, and it's just like you talked about. And we play a lot of Lamentations of the Flame Princess stuff, and it's all up to them and describing to me what's going on. Because the minute I crack that book, it's ruined, and then I don't get the surprises that are supposed to happen. So I have to like wait till the campaign is over, and then I get to flip through and look at all the art. It's like, first of all, the only thing I have to see is like the cover, and I feel like there's all this work that goes into it that is only being experienced by like 25% of the table, or or less.
Yeah, well, and we could kind of cheat also, and because Dirk obviously knows how much it takes to do all of the art,
right? And you work hard. You should get to enjoy your stuff.
My art is only for DMs. Players look away.
That's right. But this way, it also gave us a way that we could kind of reuse the art without cheating, or it didn't feel lame, because the dungeon master needs to know what the salamander looks like, but it's okay to show the player what the salamander looks like in the field guide as well, and we can change the size and scale it and stuff. And so I didn't. Because sometimes when you're going through some of these books, it's like, oh, you're reusing all of this artwork. You had holes.
Right.
Whereas...
But in that context, it doesn't feel like you're being cheated or out of it or something.
Exactly.
And the fact that there is, I don't know, like 1,000 creatures in that book probably means I don't think you were like, oh, wow, you guys were really lazy.
And art really, you can have the best game in the world, but if you have the best, text and all that kind of stuff, but if the art and when they kind of combine together in a good creative sensibility way, that's when things really begin to shine, I feel like. And
just look at Silent Titans.
No, I totally agree. And it's just one of those weird things where it's like you have the right ensemble of people coming together on a project, and that's just sort of like a happy accident. Sometimes the stars align just perfectly and things come together.
I'm going to be honest. When we first got the Hot Springs Island, the Dark and even the field guide, I think there was probably a good 2 months where I just didn't touch them at all because of how good they looked.
Right.
And then even when I saw Silent Titans, I was just this this belongs in a museum or something.
Right.
This isn't something that, I don't want to get my greasy hands all over it or touch it or anything. I'll just put it on the shelf, and it's like, it's going to be a sheet of glass over it. Don't come near here. It's right next to the fine china or whatever. But it's just that's one of the things I've loved about just our book and then Silent Titans. It's just so great.
The artwork, a lot of it, and it's very iconic in Hot Springs. And like Silent Titans is like there's nothing at all that looks like it at all. It's sort of like M.C. Escher and Hunter S. Thompson kind of came together to make a baby, and that's what's inside the book. But like, what comes first? Is it like chicken or the egg? Is like the artwork inspiring or is it like at the same time both ways? Does that make, you know what I mean?
For Silent Titans, I think I got the draft from Patrick, and I read through it and made like my own art direction document for it. And I had said at that time, like, it would be cool to do this as like a sort of illuminated manuscript, because it's that type of document. And then Christian said something like, yes, but it needs to be like an illuminated manuscript made by monks who've had their minds destroyed by reality-altering Titan streams. So that's what I tried to do.
Awesome.
I've already had my mind destroyed.
It's good to go, right? So like,
Can you just, like, before you get too far in the weeds, just tell us what Silent Titans is because it's pretty brand new.
Yeah, it's a adventure / bolted on Into the Odd game that takes place in Patrick's home region of the UK called the Wirral. But it's in the adventure, the landmass of the Wirral, which is this peninsula, is made up of the sleeping bodies of these ancient world-destroying titans. And their dreams escape and infect the land. The player characters in the adventure have found themselves there from a variety of places. There's a big character creation table with people from all over the world and time. But in order to escape that land, you have to spelunk into the minds of these sleeping titans and pluck their golden dreams out, which are like literal gold and worth money. And then they go back to sleep. They stop destroying the land. So that's the basic premise of the adventure. But also, you are doing it for the second time, because the opening encounter of the adventure is you are fighting Doc Hogg, and he tells you that his dementia bomb has erased your memories. So
well, that's happy.
You are then cast forward in time and find yourselves exploring a world which you have already previously saved. So there are all of these markers of what you have done in the past. You get these memory flashes about things you did the last time you tried to stop the Titan streams. So
Patrick, who also wrote in the field guide for Hot Springs, right? He wrote one of a couple of the stories that are in there. Is that right?
He did. He wrote there's like a little treatise on elementals that's in there, and so he wrote that, and he wrote. There's a really awesome like ruin generation table for the ruins of Hot Springs City. Like, I mean, I have always been a gigantic fan of Patrick's work. I think one of the first things that like really stuck with me was he made a class for like a kamikaze librarian, and I thought it was the coolest thing that I had ever read, and I shared it on Reddit, and he got all these views on his blog, and I was I don't know, it was, and then we started talking on Google Plus, and it was fantastic.
His writing style is very his own.
Yes,
and like Veins of the Earth was my first encounter with the stuff that he had put together, and I feel like Veins does exactly what Silent Titans does, where it's this perfect mesh of artwork and writing between him and Scrap, and in this case, him and you, and like there's this perfect blend of like the way the text is, like did you let that, like was the style of this already kind of in his mind in terms of like the look of it initially, or did you? Like, where did that come from?
Like, of the layout?
No, like the art, like it's very distinctive, and there's nothing like this is not like anything. You know what I mean? Like if you were to say, "Hey, look at this."
No, honestly, I just try to make it look like good, normal-looking, boring art, and
You failed miserably.
I'm honestly trying to do the best standard art that I can, but I'm at war with myself in every moment. And so I get halfway through and I'm like, and then it turns out like it turned out.
Because I'm reasonably certain there are certain sort of art styles or whatever, or different books where you could take any piece of art out of this, pull all the color out of it, and just hold it up and be like, what book is this from? And I guarantee you there's not a single picture that's in there that you wouldn't be like, oh, that's clearly Silent Titans, And you could probably even tell just by matching the cover up. Like, you could have the Silent Titans cover to a person who's never seen it at all and be like, that's the one that goes in there. And like that blended sort of, it has the same aesthetic throughout, and it kind of like gives it a whole cohesiveness to the world.
Yeah. I mean, when I was doing it, the important thing to me was the book as an object. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of what I had in mind, the illuminated manuscript idea, that the book is the product. Like, I'm not trying to necessarily depict things as much as I want to have good depictions of things in the text, as much as I am capable of, but I want the object of the book to evoke the nature of the text.
Right. Well, it's perfectly captured. It's just like bizarre and surreal and like mind melting almost, in a way.
And freaking gorgeous.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Like, you just look at it and you're like, holy, like there's so much going on. Well, I think it ties it all together back with Hot Springs, like all of it, everything that you guys have published and produced. Like, it's nice to have quality content in the books, but like as an artifact, like a physical product that you pick up, like there's a texture to them and a look to them, and like if you put the Hot Springs, the Field Guide in the Dark next to Silent Titans, they are very distinctly different in huge ways, but they are all like a fantastic physical thing to just the texture and the feel and the look.
And I think it's like Silent Titans is a cohesive whole, and Hot Springs Island, yes, I think, is a cohesive whole, like together. I don't know. I mean, in terms of like the objects of the books themselves, I know that for a long time, the printing industry has, it's like, oh my God, books are dead. Nobody's doing books. Oh, it's over. I mean, my personal take on it has always been that what's happening is that the cheapo like paperback book, that's dead, because you can get a PDF, and a PDF weighs nothing. It costs nothing to ship. Like, you can make an infinite number of PDFs, and like it costs you nothing effectively. So if you're gonna make a book, like, make a book, right? Do weird, crazy things. Like, I really wanted to do like a book project where, and I mean, it's still not the one that I was going to, but hopefully in the future, I really want to do something where you have like that ink that they use on money, where it looks different colors depending on how you're holding it. Because like, you can do cool stuff like that. You can put holograms in there. You can make it like actually metallic ink. You can do stuff with texture that you can't do in other ways. So I mean, if you're gonna do it, like go all the way.
Well, and there's like, when you're looking at it on a tablet, like this Silent Titans, if you look at it, it's not going to have the same feel looking at it on a flat screen as it is when you're holding it and you're like, what is happening? Like, what is and at least from my perspective, and I know a lot of people in our circle of gamers and friends that we have, printing is expensive, and good printing is even more expensive. But that said, I'm more than happy to pay for that quality, because PDFs are convenient, but I want to have something that I can be like, this is a real thing that I have on my shelf, and look at this. It grabs your eye when you see it on the shelf.
And well, I was going to say, not only that, but as a gamer, that how many times have you had a book where you're grabbing it and using it, and then over time you see it, the sides begin to fray, maybe a page moves, the binding begins to come apart and stuff, and it's like, I don't know how many books where I spend like, okay, I need to get a new copy because I've used this one so much,
right.
And that was one of the things that when we sat down, we want to make a high quality book, so that way you use it, as you use it, it's not going to fall apart. It's not going to, it's not going to look worn or gross or anything,
So before I started working at a video game company, I was working in San Antonio, Texas, and I was selling fur coats. So I was selling these like high-end luxury goods, which are completely decadent for San Antonio because it never gets cold enough to justify wearing one ever. Because fur coats are not about warmth. That has nothing to do with it. But so like I was kind of tapped into that I don't know, existence, just watching it, right? And so this fashion designer, Yves Saint Laurent, he dies, and apparently I read this story that, that people were remembering, things about him and stuff. And so one of the stories, apparently, and I don't know how true this is, but it would say that before his big fashion shows, he would get super freaked out and he would just couldn't handle it and start having meltdowns. And so then he would go off somewhere into Paris and he would go to these fabulous antique stores, just having this meltdown and say, I need to buy something beautiful. Find me something beautiful. And he would spend thousands of dollars on antiques in order to calm himself down. And so I'm half joking, but I'm telling the guys, I'm we need to make sure that these books that maybe in 100 years, this crazy person like that can go into an antique store and find one of these books and be oh, I'm so calm now. And it needs to last that long and it needs to be that beautiful. That's what I'm going for. So
that's the most amazing inspiration to make something ever.
So that's awesome. The level of ridiculousness that we have over here. And yes, or that I have. Me, I will claim that.
Have you guys played this adventure? Either of you?
I have not.
I have not had a chance to actually play Silent Titans myself. So
not yet, no.
I missed the Kickstarter, which really made me mad. Kickstarter makes me crazy sometimes because it's I missed the thing or whatever because you didn't get the email or whatever, you forgot. And so I was super happy to run into it. I was yeah, exactly. So Gen Con is always a happy accident for me sometimes because you see a lot of stuff and you're I completely forgot about that, So, but... were you involved with the playtest or playing of it at all? Or
I've run a bit of it. I ran 5 sessions of it, but the group that was doing it fell apart. But it was fun.
Right on.
The biggest boon about it, I think, for running is the character creation table. Everybody immediately loves it, basically, and all of the characters are interesting and have something about them that can be engaged with.
So it gives them a small backstory, or what is it about it that is different?
Yeah, it's sort of, it's taken from the character creation table in Into the Odd, where it's essentially very sparse. It's just the character's name, their stats, and then their equipment, and sometimes their equipment includes things I don't know, having beautiful hair or something like that. There's one character that always has tea and sandwiches.
You never know.
But the interaction of these characters is interesting because of the nature of the setting, where it's this plug hole of the multiverse. And you can have future tech spy with a cell phone trying to hack Titan brains at the same time as you can have some Napoleonic soldier
or a Roman dude.
Yeah, Roman dude. Yeah,
and the little blurbs that are in there, it's I don't know. It's just evocative enough. It has just enough. It's not too much. It's just a little bit right there, but it's stuff that's very graspable, and so you can seize it really fast and be oh, I'm going to be this goofy person that can always make tea and sandwiches. And so then you have this tool. And, it's that thing, if you give a person a shovel, they're always going to be trying to dig holes, right, to solve the problems. Right. And so if you always have tea and sandwiches, then you're always going to be trying to use that in order to influence these mad titans that you're, when you're dealing with their personifications of themselves as you, watch them melt down and just need something beautiful. But you have beautiful hair, so everything's fine. And it all just comes back,
So one thing that I like is that with Silent Titans and with Hot Springs is that they're not Silent Titans is has all the Into the Odd stuff with it, but you could very easily take this into nearly anything, right? And the same is true with Hot Springs, and not to try and go down some giant, Pathfinder versus whoever cares. No one cares. Play the games and have fun. But I think that's one of the things that's nice is that when you sort of distill down the essence of D&D into the very basic forms of it with OSR stuff and Into the Odd, that you can sort of take these great, inspired, amazing products and onto any table, whether it's a Pathfinder table or a 5e table or a Lamentations table. It will go into any of it.
So I feel I'm also very opinionated about this because I'm just very opinionated. But my thought is that, and this is one of the things why I said I wanted Hot Springs Island to be system neutral, because I think that what happens is that, like, so I liked video games, and I probably over the course of my life have done more video game stuff than I have done tabletop stuff, though I've definitely done a lot of both. But my perspective is that think about consoles, right? So like in the old days, you have a Nintendo console, you have a PlayStation, you have an Xbox or whatever. You can take a game and then you can port it so that it functions on each of those consoles. Whereas I think that there's a lot of baggage in the tabletop, industry, from approaching things from the concept of a board game, where if you buy this game, it's a total and complete system in one little box. And so it has to have the rules, and it has to have the this, and it has to have the that. And so my whole thing is I think that we should stop making games and start making games, more like video games, where it's like, I'm making this because if I could have in a perfect world, if I had all the money anywhere, I would have Hot Springs Island, the core books just as they are, and then there would be a little book for 5th edition D&D, and it would have all the stats for the monsters for 5th edition D&D and any other like relevant, rules and stuff, and it would have cover art by that Hydro 74, what's his name? Is it Jason? Anyway, Hydro 74 has been doing those like custom covers for the D&D stuff. And so it would be, this is the D&D rule book for Hot Springs, and it would be his interpretation of something that was in that, and then do something like that for Lamentations of the Flame Princess, have that conversion kit with, Yannick Bouchard doing that art, and then do a Dungeon Crawl Classics version, so that then whatever game it is that you play, because the thing about systems, and like video game systems, and I think tabletop game systems, is they're expensive, not necessarily in terms of money, but in terms of time, because you have to learn it, and you have to teach it to all of your friends. Right. And so once you've invested that into it, if somebody comes along and is like, well, here's this new game, you should play that. It's like, I've got like inertia that makes it difficult for me to do that, and I don't really want to do that. And so that was a big sort of foundational thing.
Well, I know it seems like several of the sort of like system neutral settings and stuff that have existed in the past, they just sort of, they didn't have enough of anything to sort of really make you want to go after it, and that has started to shift to where it's, for whatever reason, either whether it's creative energy or just the right people in the right place, but it seems like specifically with these two things, and there are several others that are coming, more in production, and ones that have come before, where that doesn't necessarily seem to be the case. Like, it's not like people are saving their darlings to make sure I can make this for Dungeons and Dragons or whoever. Like, they're making their own things because publishing is a little bit easier now, and you can sort of really grow and make something awesome that will fit anything.
I would say that the real gatekeeper that exists is yourself. I mean, like, you're the one holding yourself back from pretty much anything, because you can, there are free tools literally everywhere. You can write your thing and just make it, and it's done. And so it all comes down to what you define done as, You've
probably...
Well, just playtesting Hot Springs Island, we did a majority of the development stuff and the characters and everything with the Pathfinder rule set. And then, we play tested with the old BX rule set. We've done 5e. I actually met a group of kids from, I was at a convention, PAX South, not this year, but last year, and they had bought the book, and they were using Dungeon World.
Oh, right on.
But I've been talking to people who use all these different rule sets, and that's, you can't do that with, like Storm King's Thunder or with Curse of Strahd.
Well, I also feel like sometimes there's not enough. There's not enough there, like with a lot of products, that it's like, I want to put the effort in to make this thing into, whatever D&D or whatever it is. Whereas when you have something that is like inspired and amazing and evocative, it's like, oh, I'm going to put the effort into this now.
Well, and also I think that the stat blocks and the rule-specific language and stuff can really just kind of bog it down and make it more difficult to see, like, well, here's the meat of the thing. Because it's like, oh, there's all of this, and then you're like, oh God, do I need that whole stat block? Do I have to have all of that information?
Do you find that more free, like creatively more freeing to make like monsters and stuff like that when you don't have to find yourself that way.
Well, and your page real estate, like in your book, is not occupied by that stat block. Now it's occupied by important details about your cool monsters. Well, it's the art.
Dirty's position on this.
All right,
also,
excellent.
I want the game to be playable. I want it to be a game. I want it to be playable from the book. And I want, as writing the game, I love to have simple rules that make sense that I can write using the stat block. That the stat block itself communicates thematically and like ludonarratively, like what is going on with this monster. And so if I have a system that's like simple enough, like Into the Odd, that I can bolt on like setting specific things to, that it all can, so that the rules are inherently thematic, that I can say, oh, this guy has like 99 armor, and that is like not just stat block. It's not. It tells you something about the world and the way it works and the way it will be interacted with as a game by the players.
That's legit.
Good.
And so I don't know. No, I think that the problem with stat blocks is that the rules are too complicated.
Well, that's what I was going to go.
That's really
Into the Odd and BX are great examples of where that's distilled down to the very essence of it. So, like, I almost feel like there's not a lot of intellectual heavy work you have to do to sort of put that together. Whereas if it's a Pathfinder or a D&D thing, sometimes when there's nothing there, there's feats and all these things to consider sometimes, and you want to make, and that takes a lot more effort to do.
Well, you do have to have a common language, and so like one of the things is that Hot Springs Island, it assumes that you are going to be using like a D20 system.
Yeah.
It assumes that you're going to have access to those dice. And so, I mean, if you go completely, like if you throw it all out the window, then the person that's using it is going to have to do even more work that they may not want to do, right? So having at least like simple basic rules, I think that makes sense. And there is definitely a whole lot to be said for having a complete and total thing. I mean, that it's playable out of the box. I mean, sales wise, like just as a vile capitalist, just watching that happen is fantastic. And like down at the Lamentations of the Flame Princess booth right now, for this Gen Con, they ended up getting extra of the rule books.
Right.
And so James is doing this like special that he wasn't planning on doing, where if you buy like some of the starter adventures, then you get the rule book for free. And like people like jump on that like crazy,
right?
Because it's all, oh dude, I can get the rules for free, so like I can get a game and I have rules that I can do more with on my own. So I mean, there's definitely a lot to be said for that. And so you can't completely throw the baby out with the bathwater, but I can dream a little bit.
This rule set is available online for free too.
For free, absolutely.
You could play it right now and not buy anything.
Yeah. And same thing with like Into the Odd, I believe that you can get that for free as well. So like a lot of the indie guys, they do that because I mean, so on one of the very first interviews and stuff that I did, and I'll probably go ahead and repeat it here, but we were talking about piracy, and I'm like, I mean, if somebody pirates my, Hot Springs Island PDF, like, I'm kind of okay with it, because if they're playing the game, there's a tremendous amount of value in like a person shows up and they're able to organize like 6 or 7 people to play a game or to play multiple sessions of my game that doesn't really equate so easily to, like, I can't put a price on that, because they've invested so much more time and so much more stuff into that. And so maybe they can't shell out, the $60 to get the book right now. That's okay, because the books are nice enough that like I know you'll come to me when you can to get the physical object. So like go ahead and play it now and then come back and see me. Like,
I feel like that's at least for RPGs, that's the right way to fight piracy, because in some ways you're never going to beat it. But if you have something that as a physical artifact that you're like, this is amazing. Yep. Sure, I got it, but now I've got to have it.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's like you were saying before, like in the case of Silent Titans, you're not going to. You can see it on the tablet, and then you have it right there. But then once you hold that book, I mean, it kind of like it really draws you in. I mean, even just looking at the front cover, you're just like, oh wow!
Well, it hits all your senses.
Yeah, and
you can smell it, and you can feel it, and you
start flipping those pages, and you look at it, and you're just like, I mean, like I'm just like, I don't know what's happening, but I need to know what's happening, and then and that's all you do, and so I think that's one of those things about having that in your hands. That's so great.
I think there's been a realization, because a lot of times, like with 2nd edition and 3rd edition, sometimes not that the printing was bad, but it wasn't exceptional. It was just like, you know, and now it seems like, I think that it's become more common to see success of products that cost $50, $60, $70 to where people are willing to pay for that if the production quality is there.
Well, I mean, that's what the AAA, you know, video games, that's what they cost. The, like, Wizards of the Coast is setting the price. And so, I mean, if you can make something that's competing, that's like comparable or even better than them, even if you're a nobody, like, I think that people are already comfortable with the price. I mean, I know that there's sort of like a meme that won't die that's like, oh, you know, tabletop gamers, like, they're so cheap they won't buy anything. And I'm like, I think they're just kind of picky and they won't buy trash. So maybe...
And when we were in high school, we were buying all of these like White Wolf splat books that cost $40 and the spine would break the first time you'd use it.
I don't know how many first edition books I have where the cover is entirely off.
Yeah.
Like, it's like magic. Right on. Yeah. So I think what's sort of next? Like, so Hot Springs is like so big. You said 9 islands, right?
Well,
and like, I'm not to. Like, you've set a very, very high bar.
Yeah, and the sophomore album is never as good as the freshman album, so there will never be any more. No, I don't know. I mean, we agonize over this a lot, and part of it too is that it's like so. So while we were, you know, it took us like 5 years to get Hot Springs Island finished. And so, you know, I got married and then I had a kid and then I had another kid because I don't know what happened. I don't know where babies come from.
We have 3, I understand.
And then, yeah. And so
they're actually giving something out at the Lamentations booth.
Yes. Yeah. So I have 2 small children. And then, you know, Gabriel, the artist, he got, you know, he has a baby now, or, well, I guess it's now 2. He's Orion's 2, right? Like, God, it's crazy. So, yeah, so this time is passing, and we're, like, running around doing all of this stuff. And so, I mean, it's just... You know, and then the thing that becomes tricky is that once you start doing this and you start finding some success and it's like, oh, I'm becoming a little business, then you have all of the like little business problems. And so it's like, okay, so I'm taking care of my kids all day and then I'm able to like go down and start working because thankfully I have this really awesome studio space where I can go work, which is good. But then it's like, okay, now I'm going to sit down and just take care of, oh, there was a shipping problem. Oh, somebody has a customer service issue. Oh, there's a question. Oh, I need to check the social media stuff and see if anybody's like saying good things or bad things, and then suddenly it's like 10:30 and it's like, okay, now it's time to be creative. And I don't know. So it's exciting. We would definitely like to do the rest of them. We're working on the Spire Islands, as we're calling them, which are the 2 islands. So Hot Springs Island is 25 hexes. Then there are these 2 islands where the lizard men come from, the green-scaled Goa and the blue-scaled Kiru, that are kind of in opposite areas. There's North Spire Island and South Spire Island. Super creative names. And but
working time.
Right.
If you look at a map, no one is that inspired when they name things generally, right?
I think it's more evocative to name it what it is than to try and call it like Thmick, you know, or some fantasy word.
What sticks in your head?
Yeah, right. And so those 2 islands together, if you add them all up, it's 26 hexes. So that should make the book about on par with Hot Springs Island. Because, I mean, we don't want it to then be like, oh, hey, we had 9 islands, so now you get to buy 9 books. Right. You know, I mean, but we want to have like a reasonable amount of content that we can, you know, get done.
Right.
And then, of course, at the beginning of this year, you know, the Kickstarter did the Zine Quest thing, and so we thought, oh, hey, we could do a quick little zine, and that'll be a quick win for us. And then, because we're idiots, and then it became bigger, and it became bigger, and we hit 48 pages. And once you hit 48 pages, it weighs, well, with all the
zine stuff is bound.
Yeah, it weighs too much. And so, I think we're going to make it like just a nice book. And so that's the main focus right now, is to just get that done and out and, you know, to everybody. And then, I don't know.
So Hot Spring or Swordfish started off like as a company, right, with just Hot Springs.
Right.
So then, how did you? And you've talked about like the desire to do detail more of the islands. How did it get connected in to decide to produce Silent Titans then?
Well, it was an accident because
I was fur coats.
Yeah. So I'd been working on Deep Carbon Observatory with Patrick and doing the layout and everything like that, and so as that was progressing, he was also working on Silent Titans, and so he then just started asking me like, "Hey, can you like help me publish Silent Titans?" Because his plan was to do it on his own, and he was like, "I need these things, and like I use a warehouse because I have small children. I cannot be going to the post office all the time,
right?
So like I can't box those things up. So like I kind of have set up a little bit of a, I don't know, foundation network, whatever.
Right.
And so Patrick's like, can you help me do this? And so I told him no a couple times, and and then I said, no, yeah, sure, I can do it. And so I ran the Kickstarter, and it went very, very well. And so now we have these books, and so that's just kind of what happened with that. And I like it, and I like the way that we arranged the deal and everything, and I think it makes sense for what I wanted it to do, because I like sort of what James does with Lamentations, where you know, a big percentage or the majority of the money goes towards the creators, and so we, you know, had a deal like that, and so I want to do something like that. I'm working with Emmy Allen on potentially doing, or not on potentially, but I'm working with Emmy Allen on doing like a deluxe version of the Gardens of Yin. So that's right, like on my thing, like that I want to do, because I love that freaking book. So I guess I'm just an Anglophile, I get with reading. I don't know what it is, but like I read like Into the Odd. I love it. Like Electric Bastionland, it's fantastic. Emmy Allen stuff, Daniel Sell stuff with like Troika and Melsonia, like all of those things are phenomenal. And like when I read them, I'm just like, this speaks to me, and I like making pretty books, and I'm like, this should be a pretty book. Like, Emmy, you need to make Gardens of Yin this gorgeous thing, and let's try and do that, and I'll run the Kickstarter and yada yada yada. And so kind of like while I've been chasing after that stuff, because I can do the layout and things, then Donnie has been working with Evan on like getting the rough drafts and everything done for, you know, the Spire Islands and whatnot, has been the sort of the split and stuff, you know, because I personally have a problem with blank pages, and it's like, here's a blank page, give me scenarios and stuff, and I just look at it and don't know. Right. Well, I can't do anything. But then if somebody gives me stuff, then I can get all opinionated and be like, oh, well, this reminds me of all these other things that I've seen. What if we push it this way? And then they're like, we hate you, Jacob. Go away.
But I will say, though, to his credit, though, it's pushed. I mean, I speak for Evan in this case, but yeah, it's pushed he and I, Evan and I, to really like, because we would do that, and even early on in the process, we would pitch him something, and he'd be like, "No, what about this? Well, what don't you like about that? I don't know." Okay, so then we have to try and like figure it out, but it constantly becomes this. In improv, there's this thing that they do called new choice, where it's like anytime you do something, you get this statement, and then someone may ring a bell and say new choice, and you have to like respond differently. And each time you're responding differently, and it kind of became that, where it was like we would give him something, he'd throw it back. We'd give him something else, he'd throw it back. The third thing, fourth thing, 17,000th thing,
and then we get neurids and paintings.
Yeah, you know. but really, it's just been for me, it's just been like rapid fire constantly, because now that I run games and now that I'm doing stuff with it, it's just immediately just happens, and it's just the constant like push of, okay, what do we need? Okay, we need this. Okay, and then it's just immediately just writing stuff down.
Well, when you have the right kind of group of people together that line up like personality-wise, you can really, you know, push each other and drive each other to inspire each other to do better, to, you know.
Well, and for us, we were so like when the four of us, when me and Donnie and Gabriel and Evan were all working in the same room, like it was me and Donnie and Evan that were talking constantly, and then Gabe was kind of sitting off in the corner at a desk, and he was just drawing the entire time. And so he did not have the same, or does not have the same kind of background that we do with playing role-playing games, but he likes video games, and he likes monster movies and horror movies and all that kind of stuff. So he has a different set of assumptions than the rest of us. And so then he would turn around and be like, hey, what do you guys think about this artwork? And we'd be like, well, we have to just scrap everything that we've said because this is amazing. And then we would change everything in order to fit the art. We did that in multiple instances. And so,
but it was,
is it all fantasy art that you, or is there somebody in your group who has like a wicked fascination with biology? Because that's the creatures that I love the most from your book are strongly resemble something you would find in nature that's just like deadly and weird.
Well, Gabriel has this huge book just animals. Like it's all of these pictures of animals, like this beautiful book of photography of animals. I mean, it's probably like that thick. I don't know, like 6 inches or so. Like it's huge. And from a conversation that we had early on, like he would just spend all of this time just drawing animals, just drawing them over and over, and like his organic stuff is just amazing. Like I don't know. And I have watched him draw. I have taken pictures of him drawing and made a time lapse, and I don't know how he does it. I haven't been able to watch Dirk do that yet, but maybe one day.
They're fantastical, but still grounded enough to be, like
plausible.
A real creep. Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Yeah. There's like just enough. I don't know. But I think it's just that I think he spent so much time studying like the forms of real things, and they're all chimeras. It's just a little piece from here and a little piece from there, and it just sort of. I don't know how he does it. It's black magic. It is the blackest of magic. I don't know. But yeah.
Right on. Well,
Yeah.
do you guys have any? I mean, like, we're about 50 minutes. Like, we don't have a hard out or time or anything unless you guys do. Or...
No.
I can sit here and geek out about whatever all day long. It's all good, but I don't want to. I don't like if you guys got stuff to do or whatever.
No, we ran 2 games at the Hot Springs Island here at the con. Gen Con. So I ran one on Thursday, and then had the second Hot Springs game on today early on, and then we ran Tomb of the Black Sands as a play test, and we did something completely different with the beginning. I did just like kind of on a last minute thing because we were talking about it. I hadn't run it yet. And so like created it, did all that, but now this is the playtest phase. This is where we try to see like what's going on with the kinks. And one of the things Jacob mentioned was that sometimes he said the players were having difficulty finding motivation of being there. And so I was like, he was sitting here, I was sitting right there, and I said, okay, well, what if we don't have them go to the tomb? What if they start in the tomb? And he just looks at me, he's like, well, what do you mean? And so then I just start telling him, like, this is what it is. And then when I know I get the Jacob seal of approval is he doesn't say anything, he's very quiet, and he's like, no, that's good. And all it is it's no, that's good. No, that's good. No, that's good. Try it. Okay, try it. And that's when I know. Okay, I'm on the right track. And so I tried it today. I tried it on Friday, and it got a real positive response from the players. And for me, this is one of the hardest things because I don't know any of these people.
Right.
I don't know what they're into. I don't know where they come from. I don't know their preferred playing style. I have to be the guy to entertain them for 4 hours.
Right.
And for them, like, and ask him afterwards is like, what do you think? And they were just, yeah, man, that was crazy. Like, one of the guys even said, he's like, I probably never would have gone as far as I did in the tomb had I just gotten there and just had to explore. I probably would have left.
Right.
But the fact that they're trying to have to like figure out why they're here and how to get out is one of the crazy things. And I don't know if it may make the book. So
I think we can fit it in there.
Okay.
Well, there's stuff that can move, and I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But that was one of the things. And then even running Hot Springs Island, just always just seeing the players because you guys have played it, and when someone gets onto the island and they see all this stuff, do I kill it?
Right.
Do I kill it? Do I kill it?
That's one of my favorite things about it is that doesn't have to be the natural action. Like everything on there is something that you can interact with and has, well, okay, not everything, but there's also some regular deadly things as well.
Sure.
But there are more things that have a personality and they have a motivation that you can draw on to interact with them and form a different kind of relationship. Because we've actually killed, honestly, very few things considering.
Nice.
So I kind of stems from the reaction chart. So in the book, when you encounter something, there's a series of rolls that you make, and one of them is sort of like what they're doing and what's happening. Right. And I feel like that has changed the feel of that game, at least at our table, in huge ways, because now the automatic assumption isn't here's creature, smash creature, right? Because you're like, what are they doing? And sometimes it's two different sets of creatures interacting together, and then you find out why they're interacting. So it has changed the way that game works at our table. So like, where did that?
Well, what was really interesting, I thought, is you only have to show people that a couple of times, and then they go, oh.
I have so many more options, right? Yeah.
It was. I mean, having played as many games as I have, even just with like tabletop role-playing games, but even with like traditional video games, you have the creature just standing there.
Right.
It's got its little, like it's neutral motion, but then going in and then you kill it and that's it. Mm-hmm. But it's like, what if you go into the room with the orc and he's sitting down and he's like, "Do you want some food?" Right. Like the audience, like, "Wait, what?" Like, you get that where it's just, it's so unlike, what it is. And it also gives you that sense of these things are living their own lives outside of what it is that you're doing. You're intruding on them, if anything.
Right.
And now it's like, wait, how do I do? And the characters, I mean, it's funny, just like you said, the characters the first couple times are just like, what's happening? Like, what do I do? Like, they'll look at each other like, what's the right response? And then they start to figure out.
Sometimes the happy accidents that happen, like everybody has those moments in life where it's like, what is happening right now?
Right.
And that happens sometimes through the die rolls. You're like, what? Well, so this is happening apparently, and it makes great little moments. This sort of like kind of like live on beyond the individual session, and then it really makes the island come to life. It just feels different.
Well, I think that's one of the things. I know to go back to Blizzard, I know that the guys the creators of Hearthstone, they talked a lot about what they really liked about Hearthstone is that the stories that people tell their friends and tell each other are the emergent stories. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh my god, this random crazy combo happened and then I was able to do this and I thought I was dead but I was able to counter and at the last minute I got this lucky draw and blah 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 blah. And like that's I think where people get excited, and they don't necessarily get excited by this like scripted out story that they're just sort of like following along with or being a part of. Mm-hmm. And so, it's that emergent thing is really great. And so that's part of the reason that the What's Happening table is in there, and the motivations. But I mean, part of it too is that like I always tend to have really crappy dice rolls, and so if I have to be attacking everything, like my turn is going to be like, I swing my sword, I miss, cool, I'm just going to sit here and wait for these 5 people to do something. Right. And then, whereas I would rather have like a social encounter or something, or like we can run away and do other things. And then part of it as well is that if you're going to track to track what's happening on the island is a huge pain in the butt. Like, you can't track all 6 factions and what's going on, and like do all this stuff. Or I have no solution for that. And so part of it was just like, okay, so we can have the What's Happening table, and because it uses 3d6, you have a probability bell curve. Mm-hmm. So that way, most of the time you're going to get a normal day in the dungeon or a normal day in the village. But if you roll crazy, like something major and catastrophic is happening, potentially. And so then you get one of those emergent situations that people can then respond to, and then it's like, oh my god, we were there, and like there was this like diplomatic mission, and this is crazy, and then like that changes the entire game. And so that's been really cool. So I liked it.
Was that like What's Happening part of the initial process when you started putting it together, like right out the gate, or did that sort of
that came in a little bit later? Because I know that, like, for most of those What's Happening table, most of the What's Happening tables in Hot Springs Island, it was me and Evan sitting at a coffee shop, like, on 2 days, just like knocking those out, and that was really awesome. Because I don't remember exactly what triggered it, but there was something where we had that idea, and it was like, this is awesome. Oh my god, we need it for everything now, of course.
That's like, it needs to be in every So happy accident of creativity or whatever. So.
Mm-hmm. So, can I ask Dirk a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, do you use ink and markers for pretty much everything that I've seen you do? Yeah. Do you prefer ink and markers and paper versus like painting and acrylic or anything?
I'm a terrible painter.
Okay.
I have the muddiest palette all the time. I don't know how to do it. I've never successfully painted. I do like markers. I like generating plastic waste.
Okay, perfect.
I don't know. I need something new. I'm trying to figure out a step to take with media right now.
I'm super happy with this. This is amazing. Like, I really like that early period printmaking style. You know, that and it's like really has that kind of a look or feel to it, like woodcuts and whatnot. And
we'll get you like linoleum blocks, and you can do lino cuts. Yes,
that is interesting to me.
No, that's cool. I've wondered because like a lot of that stuff, like I love like the big, I don't know, like the solid color lakes and things, and so like looking at it, I'm like, dude, is there like a painting? Can I have this on like a wood panel? Like, this is so cool. But I love it.
I like that. Like, well, I think it's that wood cuts or the lino cuts, like that MC Escher, that just printmaking is just like it's its own distinctive thing. But now there's a lot of sort of like imitation of it in a way where it's not actually, you know, like no one's actually doing any wood cutting anymore, but it still has that look and feel because wood cooking, I can't imagine how time consuming and awful that has to be, but you know.
Well, I mean that for me, that's one of my favorite things about the Silent Titans artwork is that and also for the Hot Springs Island art too. Like Gabriel did all the Hot Springs Island stuff with pencil and left in the sketch lines and stuff and hated me for it and was like, this feels so unfinished. And I was like, no, I love it. It's fantastic. And, but you can see those sort of like analog sketches. Like you can see the person sort of inside of it. And like, I love that with Silent Titans too. Like you can see those marker lines and you can see that stuff in there. And it just, I don't know, I am super into that. And then simultaneously, it just cleaned up real nice when you scan it and just throw it in Photoshop and mess with the levels a little bit. Just a little. And I mean, I'm super happy with how it's turned out.
Well, it's just, there are not many gaming books because they all sort of have this kind of general aesthetic, a lot of them, right? Like this is the fantasy look or whatever. And there are very few that it's just like, what is happening on those pages? You know, and that's, I don't know, it just...
Was it Patrick that really started calling it art punk? Like the scene? Was it him?
Maybe,
Did he
I think
steal
he's
it?
the one that I've heard use that the most.
I think there's that art punk thing going on with the OSR, you know, where it's all... And I think a lot of that too goes back to Scrap Princess and her artwork. And just like... all of that where people are like, oh, this looks like kids art, and it's like, no.
I don't think
There's a lot of overlap with general like zine culture too. It's like the lowbrow thing in general.
But still, to
fits
be able
really well with that.
Yeah, but to get like there's that energy, there's that thing in it that I don't know.
And then part of it is if you think it's that easy, do it.
Right.
Let me see, and it's not.
Well,
you know,
maybe it is, and also.
But if it is that easy, then that's wonderful because then we get so much more.
Yeah,
it's fun. Crazy.
Yes, exactly.
So, is this the first time that you've done something with this particular style?
I kind of. It's. I don't know. I have a muddy conceptual palette. Also, it sort of gets dragged between projects, but. I'm doing a lot more like color stuff now. Some full color marker things.
Awesome.
So were you like you mentioned zine culture and that kind of stuff? Do you have a lot of experience and have you done a lot of zine stuff before? Like,
no.
Okay, you mentioned it. I just didn't know.
Just as an onlooker. Yeah.
Okay, right on. Very cool.
So is there? Can you tell us why you decided to do art or I heard a person once say that. Everyone is an artist, and then one day they decide to stop being an artist. Like, did you continue? Like, was there a point that you decided that you were just going to like continue to do it because of I don't know?
Well, we were doing something else. We were farming, and that gave me winters free for the most part, and so I had time to do that, and I was doing a lot of gaming as well, and so I was making stuff for my own games, and that's always what it's kind of been for me, is like making stuff for my games, and then I started posting it, and then
kind of grew from there.
Google Plus. Google Plus.
That really is a huge tragedy, though, because there was such a great community built around, especially OSR and like artwork stuff.
go to the URL.
Yes.
Still, what's wrong with me?
Yes.
And then, like, it seems like people are trying to figure out where to go, but there's no centralized place anymore. And it's just a shame because I feel like there were so many creative ideas that were kind of like distilled through that lens. You know, this is this thing I'm working on. What do you think? And, you know, you'd see the people kind of like making suggestions and stuff, and now it's gone.
I think it was so magic because of so many of the core people, or the core, you know, the central people, if you will, of the scene. They were all bloggers. They were all blogging. They all had their own blog about Dungeons and Dragons or tabletop games, and this is where they put their thoughts, and this was the whole thing. And then, you know, when Google Plus was introduced, it merged in seamlessly with Blogger, and so it sort of scooped everybody up. So you had all of these really, I don't know, high quality people that are used to generating content, and so it made it this very nice place to have conversations with people that you know were making stuff, as opposed to just like, I'm yelling on Twitter, you know, and
it was in a constructive kind of a way,
right? And everybody was like used to giving each other criticism and getting criticism and feedback and, you know, whatever. And like, because with blogs, even now, you know, somebody will post something and then somebody will come back on their blog and be like, oh well, what Jacob said was complete and total BS, and here's my like long form essay about that. And you know, that doesn't happen. That really doesn't happen on any of the social media platforms, and they're not made for that or anything with that.
I think some of them, the ones that already exist, they already have kind of a baggage and an expectation that comes along with them. So even if you wanted to take the Google Plus kind of ethos and move it over, it's just there's too much inertia behind the other ones already. And so...
Well, and a lot of it, too, in my opinion, is that in those early days of Google Plus, you could be a person that curated other people. And so I could go through and I could take a whole bunch of people that I knew were like, these are very interesting individuals that talk about role-playing games, and I could put them in a circle, and then that circle could be shared. So that then a person that was new to the platform, if you were in that very brief, beautiful, wonderful time, could then say, dude, I want to follow all of these RPG people, or I want to follow all of these photographers, and you were following real individuals that were actually making stuff, and like that just doesn't exist because it's too easy for spammers to take advantage of it, and that is the tragedy of the world we live in, I guess. I don't know.
Well, do you feel like that maybe creatively there was that was the magical time to be able to distill ideas and produce things, and now that has gone away, that like creatively both in terms of like art and content, like, you know, words on page, that will change things and what comes out in the future?
Potentially. I think it just made it easier to find other people that were making stuff. Like right now I can find other people and other people can find me, but I can't get an immediate feel for like, what does this person make? Or are they making stuff? And I think that's kind of one of the differentiators of like, you know, is this person making things? They're probably going to be much more interesting to follow on social media than just like a random person who's giving their opinions about stuff, you know? And so I don't know. It was easy for me, in my opinion, with Google Plus. Though it was, you had to be in the pit, right? If you weren't in the pit, it just looked like it was like an empty dark hole. But down in the bottom of it, we were having a great party. So
well, it was nice to see like the distillation of ideas and like picking like sort of like the pruning of the trimming the fat of ideas, and then some of them you could see them go from like this sort of amorphous idea and then sort of evolve and become an actual physical product. And it was really cool to watch that process. And now that's not there at all at any level, because there's no one, even the people that we follow on Twitter, that process doesn't happen there or Facebook or Weenie or, you know, like any of those places.
Well, I think it's just like with Twitter specifically, it's just not, you can't do long form content at all. Whereas Google Plus, like, I would start off writing a comment and then it would become, you know, multiple paragraphs. And it's like, well, this probably should be a blog post, but I have more followers here anyway, so more people are going to see it. And the nice thing is that like you could link a Google Plus post and you could put that into, you know, Reddit or somewhere else. You could share it other places, and then people could go there to have the conversation. And that, like with MeWe, it seemed like they were going to be the great savior and stuff like that for a while there, but you can't do any of that. Like you couldn't, well, at least maybe that's changed, but last time I was really looking, like you couldn't easily share your post to invite people to have conversations on like what was going on. And so that, I don't know, the ease of access, if you knew where to look, is no longer really there with anything.
Well, then you had all the like strength and power and size that is Google, right? It lends a certain amount of credibility to like the platform or whatever, I guess. And now, like with Weeme, it's just sort of like, what is this new thing? It's just one more thing for me to sign up for,
right?
Which is something that I find a little to struggle with because between Twitter and Facebook and Reddit and it's just like, how many places do I have to go to look at stuff, And now, I don't know, like because the OSR really kind of came out of Google Plus in a lot of ways. Like that's where it was almost birthed from, and now. Like, what's the next movement or evolution of it, and where's it going to come from?
I don't know. Maybe I'll get like hate for this, but I think someone said it very well earlier that Google Plus was as in the OSR, it was our Forge. And those days are over, and we don't know what we're gonna do. We're lost.
I'm gonna say that's been the question I've heard this entire weekend, just from being in conversations with other people. Is that where do we go from here?
Right.
And I was always kind of just like over here, and he would kind of like tell me that because I don't know, like I go on that stuff and I just look at it and I'm like, this looks like something I can't really personally engage in because I don't know where to start because I feel like I've jumped in the middle of something. Like I always kind of want to know like the context of what they're talking about before I give my 2 cents. And
right.
It's like he would say like, yeah, go check out Google Plus, and I would just be like, oh my god, and I was just I was the guy at the top looking down into the hole, and I'm just like, no.
It's just like those video game conversations, right? Like I didn't have the last 50 consoles. I haven't played every iteration of this game. I just wanted to play a video game.
Well, I think the comparison to the Forge is like right on the nose. Like, it really is, and. I guess in some ways it's kind of sad because like nothing like the Forge exists now, and I don't think there's any reason to think that there may be something new that will give that will become something else, but I don't. Those things don't usually move to another platform.
We're the grognards now. It's funny. Like even in the final days of the Kickstarter and everything for Silent Titans, like Patrick was on Google Plus and he was basically advertising it as this is probably going to be the last project from Google Plus, Silent Titans. And, he was legit because it wrapped up in the at the beginning of January, and then by April it was over. And I can't think of. I'm probably forgetting something right now, but I can't think of anything like off the top of my head that was like, here's like a big project that kind of came to a culmination after that in the same way. So yeah, I don't know.
Because we get to be the people that look back and reminisce and
exactly. Pour one out for Google Plus.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's sad because it's there's like I kind of like to mention when creatively the kind of right personalities line up together. There's these moments that happen, and if you can kind of strike while the iron's hot, like really amazing stuff can come out of it, and then.
I remember being in high school English class, and we were reading about the Shelleys and like Lord Byron and all of those people, and how they were like this little circle, and they all wrote and they did all this stuff
together.
And and I remember reading all that stuff, being like, man, that's so cool. Like I wish I could do that one day. Like that just seems so neat. And then it's like, oh, I guess maybe that's what Google Plus was. And now it's over, but no one drowned in a boat, so whatever.
Good with the bad, right?
Or at least not physically, Maybe there were some. Yeah.
Right on.
Cool.
Well, do you guys have anything else to plug or promote or anything, or?
So where can we? You had a project that was coming up, right? Where can we find out more?
On Instagram, I'm Dirk with a Vengeance on Instagram.
Okay.
And Super Blood Harvest is freaking awesome. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's on my Instagram also.
Yes.
Do you have any rough estimates of dates for things with that, or?
It's going to be like a 3-issue set when I release it. So I have the first 2 issues done, and I'm working on the 3rd.
Right on.
I got playtest feedback from the first 2, and I have to revise them, and then.
Is that entirely all of it is you, or you? Okay, right on. Very cool. Right.
The layout is awesome. Everything. They're very good.
So do you have previews of those up or anything on your Instagram? Or?
Yeah.
Right on. Well, we'll link to all of that. We'll put links in the show notes and all that kind of stuff. So right on. So where can people find you on social media, or if they want to, say how awesome things are, or where can they find your amazing stuff at? It's a general question. It's all good. It's all good.
Okay, so. Swordfish Islands, the website, swordfishislands.com is terrible. It's my old blog, and you should not look at it. So I found this guy because I can't write about Swordfish Islands. I can't give like distilled like, oh, here's my little pitch and here's whatever. So I was looking for someone that could maybe be a copywriter and like write some stuff. And so Jez Gordon, the amazing Jez Gordon, has a beautiful website for Feral RPG. And so I was like, this is the coolest thing. Hey Jez, can I completely rip off and copy what you have done with your website? Because it is nice. And he was like, sure, yeah, let me go. I can't do the bad Australian accent, but well, he has a good Australian accent. I would have a bad Australian accent. But he was like, yeah, sure, mate. I will put you in contact with the person that did that for me. And so I said, oh, that would be awesome. And so I'm in the process of getting that done. And I found a guy that can potentially do the copywriting. And so I'm really excited about that. So we should hopefully have a new website coming soon. But I sent him the link, swordfishislands.com, not thinking about it. And like up at the top of the page right now is this animated GIF of a person in infravision who's like peeing and they fart because I wrote a blog post about how it must be terrible being an elf and seeing humans because like you can see heat vision, so like humans are disgusting to look at. And like that was my post and that was my point. And he was like, yeah, I opened that website at work and like I know I shouldn't have, but that was like the first thing that popped up and I'm like, oh. So yeah, so there's gonna be a new swordfishislands.com coming. And in the meantime, I'm Viderac, Vyderac, the blood-sucking insects on Hot Springs Island. That's my Twitter handle. And Donnie is on Twitter.
On Twitter, I'm at Diviner Speaks.
And why are you Diviner Speaks?
Okay, so I once played a character in a game that was a diviner, and I found I don't know if it was like an old issue of Dragon magazine, but it was one of those like you have these traits, and it was like a random table that you can roll on. And the one I picked was I think he was pessimistic, and so I decided, hey, I'm gonna get into character and I'm gonna play this pessimistic diviner. And apparently I did that too well because I'm never allowed to play a diviner with my friends ever again. So I just kind of, as like a shot to them, that's what I chose. I chose the Diviner Speaks.
And there's also Swordfish Islands on Instagram as Swordfish Islands. So we're trying to keep it, consistent all over the place. Branding, woo! Yeah. Internet marketing. But Swordfish Islands is too long for Twitter, so we couldn't use that as a handle. So I don't know. But Viderac and Swordfish Islands, and Diviner Speaks, and Dirk with a Vengeance.
Right on. So those will all be linked in the show notes, and you guys should go out and support Hot Springs Island and Silent Titans and Tomb of the Black Sand, because it's awesome. All the stuff that you guys have put up has looked really, really cool as well. So thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us, and sorry about the internet connection, because, it was all awful. Thank you so much, and I think that'll do it for us, and we will see you guys next week.
Bye.
If you like what we do here at Just One More Fix, you can support us at patreon.com/JustOneMoreFix and join the other awesome Patreon supporters like Alistair H., Alan White, Hector Treelane, Simon McNair, Timothy Barra, Tiziano Furlano, and the OG Todd Olson. And get access to all of our raw audio feeds and pre-shows, as well as our quarterly zine in PDF or print form, depending on what level you support at. And I think that'll do it for us this week, and we will see you guys next week. Thanks for listening. This has been an episode of Just One More Fix. Music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find him at incompetech.com. You can support us at patreon.com/JustOneMoreFix or follow us on Twitter at JustOneMoreFix.